Hello, dear colleagues and my friends and students. Today I'm going to talk on political discourse analysis, which in the style of CDA I would like to call PDA. Let us see how we can define it and understand its different aspects. The very first thing is the definition. Political discourse analysis is the study of political language to uncover how power, ideology, and social structures influence communication in political context. That we can understand very well that there is always a discourse, and the political people would like to exert their power, ideology, and social structures through their communications and discourses. So that is why political discourse becomes very much important, because it goes to analyze the rhetoric, speech acts, and framing techniques employed by the political figures and the political parties and the institutions to influence public perception and policy. This all combined together makes it very much important that we should try to understand what is PDA or political discourse analysis. It has some of the key concepts, and out of these, we can talk about the power and ideology first of all. This shows language reflects and perpetuates power dynamics and ideologies. Political leaders use discourse to reinforce their authority and promote specific ideology. So that makes it clear that when a political person makes a speech at that time, he's got his power to promote, he's got his ideology to promote with him, and he would try to shape his discourse accordingly. And the discourse analyst definitely must look into the power and ideology concept of the discourse in it. For example, Margaret Thatcher said there is no alternative. This is known as Tina in the world of discourse analysis, that emphasized that neoliberal policies are inevitable. In her speech, she said, and nobody can dissent out of that. Such is the kind of discourse analysis that is called political discourse. The second thing that political discourse prompts is the framing. Framing is the concept which involves presenting an issue in a way that highlights certain aspect while omitting others to shape public opinion. So that is shaping actually, that is framing actually. That means even if whatever the concept is going to be about war, disease, or any natural calamity, one can hide certain things, one can promote certain things. For example, the US president said on war on terror, this framed that counterterrorism efforts a type of moral battle, invoking imagery of good versus evil. So, whatever the bad effects of that war on terror were there, these were hidden. In that way, framing is done. Not only framing, but also persuasion techniques are used by the politicians. Politicians use ethos, for example, pathos, for example, and logos, for example, to persuade audience. So three things, that is credibility, emotion, and logic, are employed by the politicians in order to invoke these emotions. For example, Barack Obama in one of his speeches said, yes, we can. It means that he was inspiring his people that they can do the things, and he was appealing to the credibility and the emotion of the people to inspire hope among them. And then comes ultimately, as another aspect of PDA, metaphor and symbolism. Metaphors are the key tools in political discourse to simplify complex issues and evoke emotional responses. The politicians employ these two techniques also in order to inspire the people emotionally. For example, Ronald Reagan, in one of his famous speeches about Soviet Union, said that it's an evil empire, which symbolized ideological conflict in the Cold War. That this type of union of Soviet people was the evil empire, and as a result, in binary opposition, he termed himself through this metaphor as the good empire. This raises the question of polarization. When we do so, at that time, do we divide the people immediately among the us people and them people? So that is the kind of divide the people make, the people who have political speeches. As for example, Donald Trump, in his one of the rhetorics in the elections in 2015, talked about the immigrants by saying they are the threats to the US, they bring drugs, they bring crime. So that was the way of telling us and them. So that type of political discourse definitely creates polarization and division. There is the concept of intertextuality also, most of the time practiced in literary discourses, but this is practiced by the political discourses also. The politicians would quote in their speeches the historical events, the cultural events, the symbols, or the previous speeches in order to create the sense of continuity and legitimacy. For example, Martin Luther King Jr. said, I have a dream. speech invoked the Declaration of Independence to highlight contradictions between American ideals and the racial realities. So that is the way how intertextuality is used. Not only intertextuality, sometimes the politician employ the tool of silence and omission also. For example, sometimes they don't speak, they don't want to say, they omit the things from their speeches in order to avoid the criticism or to obscure contentions or contentious issues of the world. For example, during debates about climate change, some leaders emphasize economic growth while omitting the discussion on environmental costs. This is quite visible in the discourses today that we will be focusing more on economic growth rather than the kind of pollution or the climatic issues which the economic growth can cause. And that is therefore silencing certain factors, omitting certain factors, and putting emphasis on certain factors. Now let's talk about some of the methods which can be employed in order to analyze political discourse. There is a critical discourse analysis that is which goes to focus on how languages reduces or reproduces social inequality. For example, analyzing how political speeches normalize gender inequality by using stereotypical language about women in leadership roles. So, the discourse invented or promoted by the political authority can be analyzed with respect to this to know how these stereotypical things, words are used in order to normalize certain things or to highlight certain things. So, CDA would help us to analyze this political discourse. Rhetorical analysis can also be made in order to understand the political discourse. This involves examining of persuasive strategies which are used by the politicians frequently. For example, they would repeat certain things and words again and again or offer parallelism and rhetorical questions. For example, Winston Churchill said in one of his speeches, "We should fight on the beaches." That speech employs the repetition of the emotional impact upon the people. So in that way, rhetorical devices are also used. These devices can help us understand what is the true meaning of the discourse. Him. Some of the people have commented on this political discourse analysis also. For example, John F. Kennedy says that in the words of that person, we can say that political discourse demonstrates ethos and call to collective responsibility sometime. For example, John F. Kennedy said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." So that is the way the politicians would inspire the kind of political discourse. Political discourse also, some of the people believe, is created through fear and security. For example, Bush said, "Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorist." This goes to let us know that framing has been done in a way of binary opposition to create the polarization. And similarly, Barack Obama also talked in the sense that he created hope and optimism. For example, when he said the arc of the moral universe may bend towards justice, but it doesn't bend on its own, which means the people have to make a lot of efforts in order to bend this arc or to bring the hope and the justice in the world that creates hope and optimism. Similarly, the people criticize this thing as well, for example, by saying you can't separate peace from freedom because no one can be at peace unless he has his freedom. So it means that for the sake of freedom, one needs to fight. If the peace is to be maintained, possibly the freedom may not be there. It means that it challenges dominant power structures by linking peace and justice together. Political discourse analysis can be applied to the election campaigns, for example. That will help us understand how candidates frame issues and target specific demographics. In the same way, policy debates can be analyzed through it, and the rhetoric around controversial policies can be analyzed. For example, healthcare and immigration can help us understand the political discourse. Media representation, another thing is there which can be understood through PDA. Social movements, examining how activists construct counter narratives to dominant ideologies, that can also be understood. Let's have here one example of political discourse analysis. For example, Obama said, "Yes, you can." This three-word sentence, for example, is a prime example of effective political discourse. The repeated use of "yes, you can" serves as a rhetorical device to inspire hope and collective action. The slogan creates a sense of unity and possibility, framing the political campaign as a movement rather than just an election. The optimistic tone of the inclusive language aims to mobilize diverse groups and emphasize change and progress. That is the way how we can understand these political discourses. Similarly, we have another quote that comes from Trump, 2016 presidential campaign rhetoric. For example, he said, "Make America Great Again." Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," employs framing to evoke nostalgia and a sense of lost glory. It implicitly criticizes the current state of the nation and promises a return to better past. The phrase resonates with voters who feel left behind by economic or social changes, positioning Trump as the agent who can restore post prosperity and strength. The simplicity and repetition of the slogan enhances its memorability and impact. So that is the way how the politicians used such type of political discourses. Margaret Thatcher, for example, said the ladies not for turning speech in 1980. This speech, Thatcher uses firm and declarative language to assert her commitment to her policies amidst criticism. The metaphor, "not for turning," portrays her as steadfast and resolute, reinforcing her image as a strong leader who will not be swayed by the opposition. This rhetorical stance helps consolidate the authority and deter political challenges. So that is the way how most of the politicians would create discourses, and that is the way how the political discourse analyst can understand or make us understand the things. Not only the political discourses, but also the literary narratives on political discourses. For example, George Orwell's Politics and the English Language, he said, is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable. The analysis says that this essay provides critical insights into political discourse. He argues that vague and euphemistic language is often used to obscure truth and manipulate public perception. This critique is fundamental to PDAs, highlighting how political language can be destroyed to serve ideological purposes. For example, this is the ideology which he wanted to perceive, or the English people wanted to promote or propagate. That helps us understand also why such things are said and done. Some of the scholarship is also available on it. For example, Norman Filclow, a prominent figure in CDA, said the discourse is not just text. It is also social practice shaped by and shaping power relation. So Fairclaw's concept emphasis on the power which helps us shape our discourses or the text. It's not just text, it's a powerful discourse according to him. Michel Foucault, for example, talks about a key influence on PDA. Noted, language is a form of social practice, a way of acting and of making actor possible. So language is not just words, not just sounds, it's a social practice according to Michel Foucault. And he says that this practice deals with the acting and making actions possible. Analysis. We can conclude by saying that political discourse analysis offers valuable tools for dissecting the complex interplay between the language, power, and society in political context. By examining how political actors use language to influence and engage, PDA enhances our understanding of political processes and contributes to a more informed and critical citizenry. Whether through iconic speeches, campaign slogans, or everyday political communications, the language of the politics shapes our perceptions, and ultimately our world. So that is all about political discourse analysis. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in some next video.